Hey everyone, Goothany by Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Billy Woods album. Today, I wrote nothing. Billy Woods is a lyrically clever, shadowy, and kind of esoteric rapper currently based out of New York, one of my favorite MCs of the past several years or so. Once part of the Super Cron Flight Brothers, he's actually been working in another duo recently, Arm & Hammer, with another New York-based MC, Elucid. Elucid actually makes numerous appearances on this new Billy Woods album over here as well. But even though I do like that duo stuff, it's been Billy Woods' solo material, his recent solo material, that's impressed me the most. The album History Will Absolve Me, some incredibly produced, grimy hip-hop with numerous tracks on this record, each one dealing with a different theme, some of which are really smart, kind of unexpected, unusual for a hip-hop album, whether it be a depiction of a deadbeat dad and his dysfunctional family, or a really surly depiction of a strip club, or the song DMCA, where he's kind of parodying the way people rationalize pirating music from independent artists who aren't really making that much money off their music to begin with. And then there's Billy's follow-up to that album, Dour Candy, where it's kind of a character portrait for a good deal of this LP, of this kind of shady drug-dealing character, not entirely good, but not entirely bad either, and we get this depiction of his sort of mundane day-to-day. And without Billy explicitly saying so, there's something about this album that feels kind of autobiographical. And this is something that to me has consistently separated Woods from a lot of other modern MCs. He gives these really vivid portrayals of incredibly dicey situations, but he doesn't really give you the full details, or maybe doesn't explicitly say whatever role he might have played in any of it. The lyrics Billy delivers can create these hyper-realistic glimpses of the situations he's talking about, but I never feel like I'm getting the full picture, like he's leaving out some incriminating details or something like that. I just always get the feeling that he knows way more than he's actually telling me. Kind of like he's waiting for the day when rap lyrics can be used as evidence to incriminate someone in court. Oh wait. Other characteristics of Billy's style is that he's got this kind of slow conversational rap flow. There are people that talk faster than Billy Woods raps. He really spits bars like he doesn't have anywhere to be. But he's still an incredibly talented writer and lyricist, and he makes sure that every line he puts out there, sort of like an MC such as Ka, for example, he makes sure every line counts and moves toward either building a narrative or a character portrait he's putting together. The issue is that sometimes Billy can kind of drop us in the middle of a story or a scene without giving full context or anything like that. Or if there is context, it's kind of hidden in some very difficult to decipher lyrics. And that's especially the case for this new album over here, which seems kind of like just a smattering of relatively short songs. A lot of the tracks on this album landing somewhere between 1 to 2 minutes and 30 or 40 seconds or so. Today I Wrote Nothing flows kind of like a compilation series of lyrical scenes from about 8 or 12 different movies, none of which are finished, but were entirely written and composed in Billy Woods' head. And there's no way you can pull all these different scenes together into a coherent narrative, because they're all coming from different movies, which I don't even know if Billy entirely knows or understands what direction any or all of them are going in. There's actually one moment on here where Billy takes a pretty hefty sample, a vocal snippet from an episode of The Wire. And if you're at all familiar with The Wire, it's pretty easy to understand why Billy would be influenced by a TV show like that when it comes to a lot of the topics and themes and the kind of criminal underbelly shit that goes on in a lot of his songs. For example, on the song RPMs, which instrumentally is a very atmospheric track, doesn't really have a strong backbeat to it or anything like that. It mostly feels like the epic synthscape that you would find in the opening or closing credits to a really great 80s post-apocalyptic action movie. But lyrically, what Billy is describing here is sort of the inner monologue of somebody who is being carted off by the police right now in slow motion, and every single detail and just micro thought in this person's head is kind of explored or explained. Everything from this guy kind of talking slick because he wants to give off the appearance that he's going to be back in the neighborhood really soon, to people watching him getting carted away in the back of this squad car as if it were a hearse, saying that as he's getting carted off, he has a Max B smirk. Because of the time constraints Billy purposefully puts on this album, the beats are kind of bare. The hooks are pretty stingy, and when a hook is here, maybe it might appear one time before the track either ends or maybe introduces one more verse and then finishes. The shortest song on here is about 45 seconds. It's called Dreams Come True. It's a hilarious anti-love song, and these are all the lyrics. These are all the lyrics in this song. They're funny, but these are all the lyrics. This album actually delivers one lyrical loose end after another, which on the surface it sounds kind of unfulfilling, but for me anyway, it was actually pretty entertaining. You know, sometimes an artist is so talented that even their sketchbook is impressive to look at. It's kind of like that. The record here kind of starts off in a somewhat inconspicuous way, though, with another rapper rapping, Elucid, and he kind of gives this day in the life verse. I'm not really sure how it ties into the whole record, though I do like it. It's really the verse after this one, Billy Woods' verse, where he kind of delivers the manifesto of the album, talking about how he's making the effort to write, but yet the page kind of stays blank. He's just drained on ideas, and after this verse is over, he just dramatically states, "Today, I wrote nothing." And after this, we get the song Big Nothing, featuring some DJ scratches from Mo Nichols, who reappears on this album numerous times to do exactly that. And over a kind of redundant and meditative piano loop, Billy delivers these lyrics about just boredom, maybe a bit of ennui or something like that. This album, to a degree, seems inspired by a lack of inspiration, which is something that's not often talked about in hip-hop music. Usually hip-hop music's all about the times when inspiration does strike and things are exciting and things are happening. This song, much less so. And it's really contemplative track too, like many of the other songs here are. However, this album didn't just bore me to death or anything like that. The album does pick up momentum, does bring some more visceral tracks with some clearer themes or topics. For example, the song Woodhull has this incredibly punchy synth line soaked in this disorienting echo, and Billy Woods is back to delivering these kind of urgent and very snide vocal performances. We have the song U-Boats, which features this just grimy, squelching instrumental that apparently was produced by Bus Driver and Aesop Rock. And the song is essentially about drug dealing, and given the title of the track, there are a lot of nautical themes. And given that it is Billy Woods, he is exploring the dark side and the downside to drug dealing. He's not really in the whole glamour aspect of the profession. There's a great verse from Elucid as well on this track, and this song is one of the few tracks here that I think instrumentally transitions right into the next cut. The song Zulu Tolstoy, which is one of the only rap songs I think has ever mentioned Mr. Tolstoy, but it's actually a pretty smart track with Billy Woods being a rapper, writing about himself, writing about a rapper, writing about himself. It's a very meta track, and it kind of borders between being funny satire, but also a sad reality of this younger rapper who is very hip, very trendy. There are a lot of mentions of industry cliches on this track. He actually writes from the voice of the character for a second, saying he'd say no homo if this was his track. And there are other tracks here where I don't 100% understand what exactly the overarching theme is yet. but I do love some of the one-liners Billy Woods is coming through with on these songs. For example, the song Bicycles, where over this kind of rickety guitar-led beat that kind of sounds like a Tom Waits song, he says, "Second childhood, neither were very nice." There are moments on this LP where Billy displays that he has the wit of a comedy writer. Another line here where he says, "Not one to face the music, gave it a crude mix." There's some great lines as well on the song Borrowed Time, where Billy is kind of reflecting on meeting up with old friends and associates, talking about old times, but it simultaneously, while it does feel good, it's awkward too, because you realize how much distance has grown between you and whoever you haven't hung out with in so many decades. And there's a pretty hefty MF Doom sample on this track as well, "Living on Borrowed Time, the clock ticks faster." I could go into nearly every track here describing its handful of unique characteristics that either separate it from the other songs when it comes to what is being said on the track, or the beat being so wildly different from every other beat here. We're talking about 24 songs on this album that push just over 50 minutes in time. So while there are highlights on this album, they're all incredibly short, and I think you're kind of just enjoying them in the same way that you might a beat on like J Dilla's Donuts, for example. It's almost as if this album is some producer's crazy short beat music album, but Billy just decided to put lyrics over these songs no matter how short they were. So while the downside to this is that he doesn't give himself a whole lot of time to build up any of these concepts to something that really hits hard, though occasionally that does happen because he does come together with a really poignant or a smart lyric, he doesn't give himself a whole lot of time to work out these themes and kind of tease them out on a song. What's cool about this project is Billy kind of lets go of his inhibitions and does some weirder stuff and takes some risks and plays with some imagery and maybe some themes that he wouldn't have talked about otherwise. While the opening track to this LP to me wasn't the most fitting in the world, the closer is actually very fitting. Good Night. It's kind of a hilarious track with an interesting metaphor to it. Maybe a metaphor. It might just literally be about love and just sort of lust or something like that. But Billy is in this bar asking that the bartender keep his drink full, and he's watching this woman who he seems to have history with dance. And he don't dance. He don't dance, he says again and again. But then the hook here says, "Fuck last call, put my song on." And you get this impression that Billy, toward the end of the song, has actually got up the courage to go over to her and dance. And I don't know, it was just like a super fitting finish for this album. I kind of equate it to the odd dancing fellow who pops up notoriously in the dream sequences of the main character in the Twin Peaks television series. I did enjoy this album a lot. I did think it was a really interesting LP. There are some issues though, you know, the fact that so many of the songs here are so very short and take such a very bare approach to the narrative and the beat or the hook, if there even is one. Sometimes the tracks can feel kind of shoddy or maybe just even unmemorable. But which tracks are unmemorable, I think are going to be different for different people. You know, I just think with an album formula such as this, there were going to be some hits and there were of course going to be some misses. I kind of see this album not as like a perfect display of marksmanship where you've got a revolver and you've landed all 6 shots into the center of the target. This album is more like a shotgun blast, just all the songs flying at you at once. Of course, they're not all hitting in the center of the target, but there's still like a lot of power. There's a huge burst of energy and creativity that I think went into this album. I'm not loving every track on this album, but I did really enjoy the time that I spent with this project. I did think it was really intriguing, and I could see myself coming back to this thing time and time again. I'm feeling a strong 7 to a light 8 on this thing. Transition.
If you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Billy Woods, forever.